I never expected my father's death to leave me with $14 million and a secret that could tear my family apart. The numbers were whispered at the funeral like a curse. 14 million. Imagine the land, the assets, the trust. But no one said it out loud. Not even my brother Mark. He just stood by the casket with that tight, polished smile of his, shaking hands and pretending to mourn. I couldn't shake the feeling he knew something I didn't. The lawyer confirmed it hours later. In a stuffy office that smelled like dust and leather, he laid out the will, each word striking like a hammer. The estate was split, half to me, half to Mark. But then came the line that silenced the room. All matters pertaining to the lockbox remain unresolved. Mark stiffened. My stomach turned cold. Lockbox? I asked. The lawyer avoided my eyes. Your father left no details, only that it rests on the property and must remain sealed for 30 days. After that, its contents will be accessible. Mark laughed, short and bitter. A box? That's the great mystery? The land is worth millions, and we're arguing about a box? But I saw it in his eyes, fear. That night, back at the house, I found it. The box sat in the study, perched on the mantel like it had been waiting for me. Heavy steel, edges worn. No markings except a strange sigil scratched into the lid. A brass keyhole gleamed at the center, but no key in sight. I touched it. Cold. Too cold. Like it had been sitting on ice. That's when I heard it whispers. Faint, like voices pressing through the walls. I jerked back, heart hammering. The room was empty. Then the floor creaked. Mark stood in the doorway, his face half-shadowed. You found it. What is this? I asked. He didn't answer. He just stared at the box, eyes sharp, fists clenched. Finally he muttered, it should have been mine. All of it. And he walked out. I couldn't sleep that night. The whispers followed me into every room. At midnight, my father's old Rolex, dead for years, ticked once on my wrist. Just one tick. Then silence. That's when I realized this wasn't about money. The 14 million was bait. The real inheritance was inside that box. And someone didn't want me to survive long enough to open it. By morning, the whispers hadn't stopped. They threaded through my dreams, voices curling like smoke around every thought. When I woke, the air was heavy, as if the house itself had been holding its breath. Mark was already outside, pacing the property with the surveyor and snapping photos on his phone. His suit looked ridiculous in the Texas dirt, but he didn't care. To him, the land was just numbers, dollars stacked in neat columns. When I stepped out onto the porch, he didn't even glance at me. I've already had calls. Developers, buyers. They're lining up. This place will fetch 8 million minimum. Split clean down the middle. We'll both walk away rich. I shook my head. Dad wanted us to keep it. He spent his whole life here. He didn't want it gutted for condos. Mark turned, his smile razor sharp. And what? You'll stay here, play farmer? Or worse, guard his little box like a dog on a leash? I stiffened. You know more than you're saying. His Grayson. His eyes flickered, just for a second, then hardened. The box is nothing. Forget it. The land is the prize. But when he walked off toward his car, I caught the way his gaze darted back toward the study window, toward the box. That night, the whispers grew louder. They filled the halls, pressed against the windows, echoed through the pipes. I tried to drown them out with music, but every song warped into murmurs of my name. At midnight, the Rolex ticked again, 2 sharp clicks. The floorboards creaked in the study. I grabbed the revolver from Dad's desk drawer, heart pounding, and stepped inside. The box sat where I'd left it, gleaming faintly in the moonlight. And then I saw it. Scratches. Long, jagged scratches running across the lid, as if something had tried to claw its way out. I stumbled back, colliding with the bookshelf. A picture frame fell, glass shattering. For a moment I thought I heard my father's voice in the chaos, low, urgent, pleading. Endure. I barely slept. But at dawn, someone pounded on the door. It wasn't Mark. A tall man in a gray suit stood on the porch, calm as stone, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. He carried a folder under one arm. You're Thomas? He asked. His voice was smooth, almost rehearsed. Yes. He glanced past me, into the house, as if he already knew what he'd find. Your father owed debts, large ones. They don't vanish just because he's gone. What debts? I demanded. The man smiled faintly. Open the box, and you'll know. But hurry, my employers don't like waiting. He handed me a card with nothing but a number on it, then turned and walked away. No car, no sound of an engine, just gone by the time I blinked. I stood frozen, card in hand, whispers swelling behind me like a storm. The box wasn't just family business. It was blood business, and my father had dragged me straight into it. The card burned in my pocket all day. A number, just a number. No name, no logo, no address. Every time I thought about dialing it, the whispers seemed to thicken, pressing against my skull. By sunset, I convinced myself I was imagining things. Maybe grief was twisting me up. Maybe the whispers were just the house groaning. The Rolex just a fluke. But then the dogs started barking. The property was empty. My father hadn't kept livestock in years, and yet, across the field, 3 shapes moved through the dusk. Tall, human. Their steps deliberate. I grabbed the revolver and stepped onto the porch. "Who's there?" The figures didn't answer. They stopped at the fence line, shadows stretching long under the dying light. One of them raised a hand, pointing not at me, but at the house. My stomach turned. "Private property!" I shouted, my voice cracking more than I wanted. "Get the hell out!" The man in the center tilted his head. Even from 50 yards, I swore I heard his voice, low, slippery, carried on the wind. "Open the box." The whispers surged behind me, louder, like the house itself was echoing his demand. I fired a warning shot into the dirt. The blast rang through the evening. The figures didn't flinch. They just turned, one by one, and melted into the tree line like smoke. I stayed awake half the night, revolver in hand, staring at the study door. Midnight came, and the Rolex ticked again, 3 times. This time, the box rattled. I froze. The steel lid shivered, scratches deepening across its surface. A groan, no, a growl echoed inside it, like something trapped, pushing against the metal. Then silence. I backed out of the room, slammed the door, and locked it. But the whispers seeped through the walls anyway. Endure, endure, endure. By morning, Mark was back, angrier than ever. He stormed into the kitchen, phone in hand. "I don't care what Dad wrote, we're selling this place. There are developers already wiring deposits. Sign the papers, Tom." I slammed my fist on the table. "You don't get it. This land, it's cursed. There's something in that box, and Dad wanted us to guard it, not cash out." Mark's face twisted. "You sound just like him, raving about debts and shadows until the end. Do you even hear yourself?" Before I could reply, his phone buzzed. He went pale. He shoved it toward me. A text from an unknown number. The debt must be paid. 30 nights. Or blood. Mark's hand shook. "What the hell is this?" I didn't answer. Because deep down, I already knew. The house wasn't just haunted. It was keeping count. The text didn't leave my mind all day. 30 nights. Or blood. Mark tried to brush it off. Probably some scammer who knew Dad owed money. But I could see the tremor in his hands. He was afraid. By nightfall, the fear had teeth. Headlights rolled up the dirt road. Too many to count. Engines low and heavy. A caravan. I peered through the blinds, 5 trucks at least. Men spilling out of them in dark coats, rifles slung across their backs. Their boots crunched on gravel as they fanned out across the property. Mark cursed under his breath. Who the hell are they? I already knew. The debt collectors. A voice boomed from a bullhorn. "Thomas! Mark! You've got something that isn't yours. Open the box, or we'll open you." The house groaned in response. The whispers surged, no longer faint but roaring, filling the halls like a crowd pressing at invisible walls. Mark gripped my arm. "Call the cops." "Cops won't help," I muttered, because I wasn't sure these men were entirely alive. Glass shattered in the kitchen. 2 men climbed through the window, boots crunching on broken glass. I raised Dad's revolver and fired. One went down screaming, clutching his leg. The other didn't even blink, just kept coming, eyes flat, face expressionless. Then the box rattled. The steel shivered, sigil glowing faintly red. The whispers coiled together into a single, unearthly growl. And the man stopped, dead still, for a heartbeat. Silence. Then shadows tore from the corners of the study, stretching long across the floor, wrapping around his legs like black vines. His scream didn't sound human. Mark bolted backward, crashing into a chair. "What the hell is happening?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The shadows dragged the man toward the box, pulling him across the floor as his nails left bloody streaks in the wood. When he reached it, the box snapped once, like a massive iron jaw, and the room went dark. When the light returned, the man was gone. Outside, chaos erupted. Men shouted, rifles fired into the windows. Bullets punched holes in the walls, splinters flying. Mark and I ducked behind the counter as plaster rained down. And then, silence. The gunfire stopped mid-burst. I dared a glance outside. The men had frozen, every one of them staring toward the house, weapons limp at their sides. Their shadows, long, unnatural, were shifting on the ground, moving against the light, crawling toward us like living things. The bullhorn dropped with a thud. One word rang out, not from their mouths, but from the shadows themselves, echoing in unison. Open. By dawn, the yard was empty. No trucks, no men, no bodies, not even tire tracks in the dirt. If not for the shattered glass and bullet holes in the walls, I might have thought we imagined it all. Mark sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands, knuckles white. His bravado from the day before was gone. He looked small, shaken. What was that? He whispered. I poured black coffee into a cracked mug, my hands trembling. That was Dad's debt. Mark slammed his palm on the table. Stop with the riddles. What the hell did he drag us into? I didn't answer, because I didn't know either. All I had were whispers, the box, and the ticking of a dead Rolex. That morning, I searched Dad's study for answers. Through drawers of unpaid bills, yellowed ledgers, and half-finished letters, I finally found it, a leather-bound journal tucked behind a stack of tax returns. My father's handwriting filled the pages, jagged and desperate. 30 nights. Endure them, and the debt resets. Fail, and the box takes what it wants. They come for it. Always. Protect it. Protect the bloodline. The words blurred as I read them again and again. Dad hadn't been talking about money. Not just money. This was something older. Something bound to the land itself. At the bottom of the page, one line stood out, underlined twice. The shadows obey the air. I slammed the book shut, chills crawling up my spine. Mark barged in, still pale. Developers pulled their offers. Word spreading about last night. About the land. We can't stay here, Tom. We have to get out. I shoved the journal into his chest. Read it. Dad wanted us here. He knew what was coming. Mark scanned the pages, his lips moving silently. Then he froze. 30 nights? His eyes snapped up to mine. We won't survive 30 nights of that. We don't have a choice. He laughed bitterly. Of course we do. We sell it. We hand the damn box to whoever wants it, and we walk away rich. I shook my head. It doesn't work like that. It has to stay with us. Mark's face twisted, hatred flaring. You think you're the heir? You think Dad trusted you more? No, Tom. He wanted me to lead. He knew I had the head for business. You. He jabbed a finger at me. You're weak. The Rolex ticked again. 4 sharp clicks. The sound silenced him. The box shivered on the mantel, the sigil glowing faintly. And then, my father's voice filled the room clear this time. Not a whisper, but a command. Choose sons. 1 heir. 1 box. 1 bloodline. Mark's eyes went wide. His jaw clenched. I realized in that moment it wasn't just about surviving 30 nights. It was about surviving each other. The journal's words echoed in my skull. 1 heir. 1 box. 1 bloodline. Mark didn't move for a long time. His fists were tight, his jaw rigid. Finally, he pushed the book back across the table like it was poison. I don't buy it. Dad was paranoid, raving. You're eating this up because you want to be the chosen one. It's not about wanting, I said. It's happening whether we believe or not. You heard him. You heard Dad's voice. Mark barked a bitter laugh. You mean the same voice that told him to sink every dime into this land? The same voice that drove Mom away? Yeah, real trustworthy. Before I could reply, the air shifted. Cold, heavy. The light in the kitchen bent, stretching shadows across the walls. The sigil on the box flared dimly, pulsing like a heartbeat. And the shadows moved. They slid across the floor, slow at first, then faster, circling the table where we sat. Mark jumped back, chair clattering. His eyes went wide. What the hell? The shadows coiled, splitting, shaping into vague forms. Human outlines, eyeless, faceless. They whispered in unison, the word tearing through the air. Air. Mark stumbled back, pale. They're choosing you. But as he said it, one of the shadows broke from the circle and wrapped around his leg. Mark screamed, kicking, but the darkness clung to him like tar. He grabbed a knife from the counter and slashed at it, but the blade passed through empty air. Help me, he shouted, wild panic in his eyes. I stood frozen, torn between terror and something darker. For a split second, I wondered if this was the choice. If the shadows wanted me, then maybe letting them take him would settle it. But then the box rattled violently, the sound like metal grinding bone. The shadows released Mark all at once, retreating into the corners. The kitchen fell silent, except for his ragged breaths. He turned to me, chest heaving, sweat dripping. His voice was hoarse but steady. That's what you wanted, wasn't it? You let them take me. You just stood there. That's not true. Save it. His eyes hardened into something I hadn't seen before. Not anger, not fear, hatred. If it's between you and me, Tom, then I'll make damn sure I'm the one standing at the end. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. That night, the Rolex ticked 5 times. I sat alone in the study, staring at the box. My reflection wavered in its steel surface, and behind it, I swore I saw another face, my father's, watching. The whispers rose again, louder than ever, twisting into a single command. Endure, or kill. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadows wrapping around Mark's leg, heard his scream echoing in my skull. By dawn, the house felt hollow, as if something vital had been drained away. Mark hadn't returned. His truck was gone, his room stripped bare. I told myself he was cooling off somewhere in town, but deep down I knew better. He was planning. By noon, the rumble of engines shook the land again. I grabbed the revolver, heart pounding, and stepped onto the porch. 3 black SUVs pulled up to the house. Men in suits poured out sleek, efficient, not like the roughnecks from before. Their movements were synchronized, too clean. And at the center of them stood Mark. He looked rested, even smug. His tie loosened, like he was the one in control now. "Morning, brother," he called, his voice dripping with false cheer. "I brought help." "Help?" I spat. "You brought them here?" These men represent buyers. Real buyers. People who can handle the box, who understand its value. His grin widened. "They're offering $15 million. That's more than Dad ever dreamed." The suited men fanned out across the yard, their polished shoes crunching gravel, their eyes hidden behind mirrored sunglasses. None of them spoke. "You don't know what you're doing, Mark," I shouted. "The box doesn't belong to them. It doesn't belong to anyone but us." He spread his arms wide, like a showman. "Exactly. It belongs to the heir. And guess what, Tom? That's me. Dad knew I had the guts to make hard choices. You just cling to ghosts." One of the men stepped toward the porch, face blank. "We'll take the artifact now." The air shifted, heavy and cold. The whispers rose instantly, rattling the windows, slithering through the halls like snakes. The box responded, glowing faint red, steel humming like a struck bell. Mark didn't flinch. He waved the men forward. "Go ahead, take it. He's been hiding it in the study." "No." I raised the revolver, hand trembling. "You don't understand. If they open it, none of us walk away." The lead man ignored me, striding up the porch steps. Shadows stretched unnaturally behind him, writhing like living things. My finger tightened on the trigger. And then the Rolex ticked. 6 sharp clicks, louder than ever. The suited men froze. Every one of them. Their heads turned in perfect unison. Not toward the box. Not toward me. But toward Mark. The whispers surged into a single word. Deafening. "Thief." Mark stumbled back, his cocky smile shattering. "No, wait." The shadows lunged. They didn't strike the men in suits. They struck him. Dark tendrils wrapped around his arms, his chest, his throat. He thrashed, choking. As the men stood motionless, frozen like puppets with cut strings, I screamed, rushing forward, but the shadows dragged him across the dirt like he weighed nothing. Toward the porch steps, toward the study. Mark's eyes locked on mine, wide with terror. "Do something!" But the whispers were louder than his voice now, demanding, unrelenting. "Choose one heir." Mark's screams split the air as the shadows tightened, dragging him toward the study door. His fingernails tore through dirt and wood, leaving bloody streaks. I lunged forward, revolver still in my hand, and fired into the black tendrils. The bullets tore holes in the walls, the floorboards, even shattered a lamp, but the shadows didn't flinch. They thickened, writhing, pulling him closer to the glowing box. "Tom!" His voice cracked, desperate. "Don't let it take me!" The Rolex ticked once, twice, each click like a nail driving into my skull. The whispers rose in unison. "Endure, or kill." I dropped the gun and grabbed Mark's arms, yanking against the pull. The shadows resisted, stronger than any rope or chain. My muscles burned, my vision swam, but I didn't let go. "Fight it," I shouted. "You're stronger than this." Mark's eyes rolled white. He thrashed violently, choking. The shadows coiled tighter, and for a moment, I swore they were feeding on my effort too, growing stronger the more I resisted. Then, as if sensing my desperation, the box rattled. The sigil flared red, and the shadows paused, quivering, like animals awaiting command. A voice rang out, my father's, clear as day, vibrating through the walls. "Mercy is weakness. One heir, Thomas. One." I froze, trembling. My father's words? Or the boxes? I couldn't tell anymore. But I did what he never could. I refused. "No," I whispered. "Not like this." I grabbed the revolver from the floor, flipped it in my hand, and slammed the butt against the glowing sigil on the box. Sparks flew. The shadows shrieked, recoiling in unison. Mark collapsed to the ground, gasping, his skin pale, his body trembling like a man dragged back from drowning. The whispers turned to a roar, angry, defiant. The house itself shook. Lights flickered, pictures crashed from the walls, plaster rained down from the ceiling. Mark clung to me, coughing blood. His voice was hoarse, broken. "You saved me." But when I looked into his eyes, I didn't see gratitude. I saw something else, resentment. That night, the Rolex ticked 7 times. Mark refused to meet my eyes. He sat in the corner of the study, staring at the box like it was a prize I'd stolen from him. His hands twitched constantly, restless, as if already planning his next move. I stayed by the mantel, revolver on my lap, watching the shadows slither restlessly along the walls. They weren't retreating anymore. They were waiting. And I knew the truth now. Saving Mark hadn't weakened the box. It had weakened me. The whispers pressed harder than ever, gnawing at the edges of my mind. Mercy has a cost. 30 nights. Pay in blood. I realized with a chill that I hadn't just saved my brother's life. I had given the box mine. I didn't remember falling asleep, but when I woke, the house was too quiet. The Rolex had ticked 7 times the night before. Its clicks still echoed in my head like phantom footsteps. My chest felt heavy, every breath shallow, as if some part of me had been siphoned away into the box. The study was empty. "Mark?" My voice cracked in the silence. No answer. Then I heard it, the scrape of metal, a low hum, the whispers rising like a tide. I staggered down the hall, clutching the revolver, and pushed open the study door. Mark was on his knees before the mantel, hands pressed to the steel box. His lips moved in frantic whispers, repeating words I couldn't understand. Ancient syllables, guttural and sharp. The sigil pulsed blood red beneath his palms. "Stop!" My voice was hoarse, desperate. He didn't even look up. "You don't get it, Tom. It chose me. It always did. You tried to fight it, to show mercy. But that's weakness." Dad knew. He knew I was the heir. The box rattled violently, the floor shaking underfoot. The shadows surged from the corners, crawling up Mark's arms like armor, weaving themselves around his chest, his throat. He gasped. But it wasn't pain, it was ecstasy. "I can feel it," he cried, eyes wide with mania. "It's giving me strength, real strength. While you," he sneered at me, "you're crumbling." I raised the revolver, hands trembling. "Mark, if you open it, none of us survive." He laughed, wild and sharp. "Then maybe that's the point. Maybe survival isn't the prize. Maybe it's power." The box shrieked, a metallic wail that split the air. The Rolex answered with 8 deafening ticks in rapid succession, louder than gunshots. The shadows thickened, writhing across the walls like 100 serpents. The room reeked of ozone and ash. Mark dug his nails into the sigil, blood streaking down his fingers. The box drank it in, glowing brighter, humming like a beast about to awaken. I fired. The bullet struck the wall inches from his head, wood exploding. "Get away from it!" He didn't flinch, his eyes locked on mine, glowing faintly red now, his grin feral. "Shoot me, and the box will claim you. Let me finish, and maybe, just maybe, I'll let you live." The shadows roared, pressing close around us both. My father's voice thundered once more, but it was fractured, distorted, like 1,000 voices layered atop one another. One heir, one bloodline. The other must fall. Mark's hand tightened on the box. My finger tightened on the trigger. For the first time, I realized this wasn't about surviving 30 nights. It was about the box forcing us to end each other and feeding on the outcome. The box pulsed like a living heart, shadows thickening until the study was swallowed in black. Only the crimson glow of the sigil lit Mark's face, half triumph, half madness. "Shoot me, Tom," he hissed, his voice layered with something inhuman. "End it. Give the box what it wants. Or admit I'm the stronger heir." My hand shook around the revolver. The Rolex ticked again 9 times, each click rattling my bones. "I don't want this," I whispered. I never wanted any of it. Mark rose to his feet, the shadows writhing around him like a crown. His eyes blazed red. "That's why you'll lose." He lunged at me, faster than I thought possible. I fired. The blast lit the room for a split second. Mark staggered, but didn't fall. The shadows caught the bullet, dissolving it mid-air like ash. He slammed me against the wall, his hands crushing my throat. The whispers screamed, "One must fall. One bloodline." My vision blurred. Spots danced before my eyes. Mark leaned close, his breath hot, his voice venom. "It was always me. Dad knew it. The box knows it. You're just the sacrifice." I felt the revolver slip from my grip. My fingers clawed at his arms uselessly. The shadows coiled tighter around him, feeding him, crowning him. And then, the Rolex ticked a 10th time. Not a click, a chime. The shadows froze. Mark faltered, confusion flickering across his face. The box rattled violently, the sigil blazing white-hot. And then it whispered, "Not to him, to me. The heir is the one who refuses." I gasped, the words flooding my mind with fire. The shadows recoiled from my skin, shivering like they'd been burned. Mark's grip loosened for a fraction of a second enough. I snatched the revolver from the floor, flipped it in my hand, and slammed the barrel against the glowing sigil. The box screamed. A sound that wasn't sound, a tearing of the air itself. Shadows shrieked, ripping away from Mark, dragging him to the ground. His eyes went wide, fury turning to terror. "Tom, don't do this." But I pressed the gun harder, forcing the sigil to crack. Light burst through the seams, searing and blinding. The whispers rose one last time. One heir. Mark clawed at the floor, his body splitting between flesh and shadow, his scream lost in the roar of the box. And then, silence. When the light faded, only I remained. The box sat cracked and dark, its hum gone. The Rolex lay beside it, frozen at 10 ticks. Mark was gone. Not dead, just gone. As if erased. For 3 nights I stayed in that house, waiting for the whispers to return. They didn't. The shadows never came back. On the 4th morning, I buried the revolver in the field and left the ranch behind. But the box? I didn't destroy it. Couldn't. I sealed it beneath the floorboards of the study, hidden where no one would find it. Because, deep down, I knew the truth. It hadn't ended. It had only chosen me. And one day, it would want more.